Welcome to She's Got This, the podcast for ambitious women who want to grow and scale their business and use the power of intentional energy direction to design their very best life. I'm your host, Christine Gallagher, award-winning business coach and mindset mentor to female entrepreneurs. If you're ready to own your brilliance while making bank, step into the absolute best version of you, and become a force for positive change in the world, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Christine. Today, we're talking about where to find people to enroll in your offers. Now, there are tons of ways to find people or build your list, and we're not going to cover them all in this episode, of course, but I am going to share what is working best now and also keep it simple because you really don't need to overthink this stuff. Now, yes, selling your stuff becomes a lot easier when you have an actual audience. And I always give the estimate of an audience of about 500 to 1,000 people who are your ideal clients, your ideal who, between both your list and social media. Now, can you sell lots of stuff with a smaller audience than that? Yes, definitely. But when I say an audience that's engaged, we're talking about people who are actually opening your stuff, engaging with you. So even if it's smaller, it's people who are paying attention. But you don't need a huge audience to sell your stuff. And you don't need a huge audience to sell the way that I teach my clients, but you do need one. Now, before we jump into this, I want to share just a little bit about the big picture in terms of getting people to enroll in your programs. So with my clients in my mastermind and my private clients, we teach them lots of different ways to find people to enroll, different strategies to enroll. But one of the simplest ways that we do it is through email and social media. And it looks something like this. First, it's about sending a message to your audience, and that message can have a direct call to action, which is very much like, boom, here's what I have. Here's what the offer is, hit reply and let me know, right? Very to the point. Or it could be more of a telling a story, longer form narrative we might send an email or put on social media. And we call those more nurture type calls to action. But the idea is no matter whether it's social or it's email, you want to be messaging consistently. And in my opinion, calls to action should be in the majority of your messages that you put out there. And again, a call to action just means inviting people to take that next step with you, typically into some kind of paid offer or some sort of invitation to a conversation with you. So I recommend you send messages to your email list, but also at least utilize one social media channel, if not more. For example, your Facebook group, your Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is that you use the most regularly, where your people are hanging out. And then two, after you have made that call to action, when you receive replies, you can send people what we call qualifying questions in response. So maybe you've sent an email to your audience and your call to action is simply asking them to hit reply if they're interested in more information about working with you. Or you could say, send me a DM if we're talking about social media. Now, when we're talking about qualifying questions, what I teach my clients to do is to come up with 2 or 3 questions that will qualify somebody who is hitting reply or sending you a DM. And that simply means thinking of a couple of questions that upon getting a response from the person, it would show you whether they're a good fit or not. So one example of that I've used in the past, since I teach marketing, since I teach offers, since I teach selling your offers, one of my qualifying questions might be something along the lines of, do you have at least 300 engaged people in your audience? Now, the reason I might ask something like that is because if the offer I'm putting out there requires my client to already have people who are engaging with their stuff, already have some sort of following, then that's something I would want to know to qualify that person to make sure they're the right one for the offer instead of wasting your time with people who aren't the right fit. And then step number 3, if it's a fit after the person has answered your question or questions, you can send them an invitation. So that can look a few different ways. In my world, we often work with invitation letters because we do a lot with premium, higher priced offers. And invitation letters are a really simple, but really sort of elegant way to explain your offer, list out all the benefits and outcomes and results. But you could also be sending people to a sales page if it's appropriate for whatever it is you're selling at that time. So the big question is, okay, where are your people? So the first thing that you want to do is decide on your chosen containers. Now, you can find people all over online, but you also want to, quote, contain them. An example of a container would be your email list. Another container would be some sort of social media community. So again, if you're on Facebook, it might be a group, it might be your TikTok, it might be Instagram. And also when people sign up for your email list, you can direct them to social media as well. So they kind of work as sort of cross-pollination. So for an email list, we use something called Keep, which used to be called Infusionsoft, but anything would work as far as an email list service like ConvertKit or Aweber. And again, with social media, you want to pick just 1 or 2 places where your ideal clients spend their time. You can, of course, use more social media platforms, but you also don't want to get completely overwhelmed. If you are somebody who is listening to this and thinking, okay, I just changed my business around, just changed my niche, and I'm rebuilding my audience, or I'm newer to building my audience and I don't really have a good size list yet, that's okay. One of the things that you can think about in terms of a container is more of doing personal reach out to people you know already who might be a fit for your offer. So now we've talked about having this container and having a place to connect with your people. The next thing to consider is how are you going to handle the content that you're going to be putting out? So usually what I recommend is creating a really simple editorial calendar or a publishing schedule. Now, this is a topic for another podcast, but I would be remiss in not mentioning at least that you want to nurture your people, right? That's really what you're doing with your content. And you want to send messages consistently to your community. And by the way, I always remind people that you can post your email messages to your social media and vice versa. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and have different content for each because people don't see everything that you put out. And even if they do see it multiple times, it's helpful for them to see that message multiple times because it really helps for them to absorb it more. I usually recommend a frequency of 3 times per week between social and email where you're going to send some kind of message. So if you have a signature offer, let's say, which is one of the big things I teach, or what you might call a flagship offer or a front-end offer, you can give a call to action to that offer. Maybe it's to a discovery session or to have a conversation with you in DM. And you can put that call to action in at least one of your messages per week. So finding people for your offers, it really has 2 parts. One is where to actually find them. And then the second piece is what to do once that you're in front of them. So a signature talk, for example, is one of those things you can do. So a signature talk will do a lot of heavy lifting for you. And it's an asset really to grow your audience and your list and help you get clients continuously, but it will also help you to practice better communicating to people the problems that you solve and the issues that you solve. Now, the way I first came up with my original signature talk way back in the day, and the way that I still teach clients to come up with their signature talk is to typically think about it in terms of what is the biggest pressing issue or question that consistently comes up from your ideal clients, and you create a talk around that. And it's great to have this sort of in your back pocket because then you can use it in a lot of different ways. So my signature talk has evolved over the years, and I actually have several different ones at this point. But these signature talks are things that I use when I'm interviewed on podcasts, when I'm doing something that is public speaking, when I am creating free offers and I want to take some content, I will look back at my signature talk and pull pieces and points from the talk and use it in my lead magnet. There are so many different ways to use your signature talk once you've created one, and you don't, again, have to reinvent the wheel every time you're having a speaking gig or being invited on a summit or on someone's podcast, you don't need a different signature talk for every different vehicle where you're providing content. You can use the same signature talk over and over again. The idea being that it's something that you can always pull out of your back pocket and use to solidify your expertise, really become known for, and to give people a taste of what it is that you help them with. Now, adding on to this idea of doing a signature talk, you might think about having one of your regular marketing activities being that you pitch yourself to get booked on podcasts and interviews. And the how to this does not have to be overcomplicated. Really, it comes down to researching podcasts like via Google that target your audience, that you know your audience listens to, and then pitching yourself to be interviewed. And a bonus tip here is when you start getting booked in different virtual events, for example, like podcasts or summits, this will create momentum where you start getting people inviting you. And at that stage, you want to say yes to the majority of them, even if it doesn't feel like the exact perfect fit, even if it doesn't feel like it's the hugest audience you're going to be speaking in front of. It's okay. Now, obviously, you want it to be an ideal fit. You want it to be a big audience, if at all possible. But looking back at how I really got momentum with this, I said yes to a lot of things that I wouldn't necessarily say yes to today after I've been doing this for over a dozen years. Another tip here to mention is that if you're able, you want to be sure that you direct all potential new people to an irresistible free offer. So if they allow you to share it at the end of every podcast you're interviewed in, or when you speak in person, then you definitely want to do that. If you're doing Facebook Lives, if you're doing talks, share your free offer, obviously, because this helps you grow your list and your audience, and it gives them something else to chew on. Again, that establishes your expertise and gives them a reason to give you their email address. Now, if you want to create a really big burst of people who join your audience, you want to make it your goal to speak on somebody's, quote, virtual stage at least once a week for 90 days. Now, of course, you don't have to do this, but people always ask me, how do I get momentum? How do I keep the ball rolling? How do I make sure that I'm consistently growing my people? Well, the key is to be doing something consistently and sticking to it. So when we say speaking on someone's virtual stage, maybe it's you doing a masterclass or a webinar for their audience. Maybe it's, again, podcast guesting. Maybe it's doing a joint live stream with you in a Facebook group, speaking on somebody's virtual event or summit, or offering to give something to their list. For example, somebody who has a similar audience to you, but you're not direct competitors. So you serve a similar type of person, but you don't do the same exact things. Another way to find people for your offers is to leverage relationships. And there are probably people already in your life, people with the resources needed for you to reach your big goals. And this is simply a matter of getting clear on who they are and focusing on creating that kind of win-win relationship. And the idea is to give value, or ideally help them first, and then see how they can help you. So the mantra really is give first and then receive. So sometimes people get overwhelmed when we talk about creating joint ventures or creating collaborative relationships. What it really means is brainstorming a few key things. Number one is, who are they? Just a moment ago, I mentioned that it's great to have people that serve a similar audience to you, but you're not direct in competition. So you want to think about who are those kinds of people. And you also want to ask yourself, okay, once I've identified who they are, what kind of resources do they have? How can I help them? And of course, how can they help me? But again, it always starts with you helping them first. At least I believe that that's the best way to go about it. To piggyback on this idea, you can also think about creating an unpaid sales force. So when we say an unpaid sales force, we're talking about people who are going to spread the word about you and your offers. And so you want to brainstorm everyone you can think of who would be a good candidate for helping you to reach more people. So for example, this might be people like past clients, current clients, people who are prospective clients, people who are in your network of personal contacts, people who are centers of influence, meaning those kind of people that you always see are very connected to other people, strategic alliances, JV partners, affiliates. And by the way, just as a side note here, people sometimes get confused about joint venture or strategic partners, like what's the difference? Well, usually with a joint venture partner or strategic partner, there already is a personal relationship that exists. So the level of commitment is usually much higher. And when we talk about affiliates, this is a little different because these are not necessarily people where you have a relationship or a bond with them. In a joint venture, there's usually a signed agreement. So there is that higher level of commitment. So for strategic alliances, you want to brainstorm other people and companies or websites that are already reaching your ideal people. Again, it's about not competing, but complementing. So whose message resonates with you and what you offer? And when you're connecting with these people, you want to say something really simple. And there's something that I heard from a mentor years and years ago that is still really relevant in terms of how to bring this up. So if you're connecting with that person, you could say something like, hey, if there's anything I can do to support you in your next project, don't hesitate to ask. In fact, I would love to interview you for my audience and promote your whatever it might be, book, program, class, etc. So it's okay to ensure you're getting something in return that suits you. Just be upfront and clear about your intent. And if you're doing something a little bit more official with a higher level of commitment, like a joint venture, you want to have some guidelines in place and requirements clearly laid out that is understood on both sides. So for example, what is exactly expected from them? What is expected from you? What are their concerns that their audience has? What are hot topics that their audience might want to hear about that you might have expertise in? How can you add value? What difference would it make for their members? And when we talk about guidelines and requirements, really, we're just talking about things like if you're going to be offering something paid together, you might be setting out in the beginning how you're going to get paid. Are you going to pay by PayPal? How long after you do the joint venture together will people be paid out? How many times are they going to promote for you? And vice versa, etc. Referrals are also, of course, big. And this is something that a lot of people get confused on too, because they're like, how do I ask referrals without seeming really annoying or looking like I'm just trying to get something? I have lots of templates that I use with my clients that lays out the wording of how to do this. But in the simplest of terms, basically what you're doing is you're thinking about who are the people that could potentially send you referrals in your network already. So again, it might be clients, past clients, colleagues, friends, neighbors. Think about people who might be connected to people who would need your help, would need your expertise, and simply reach out to that person and let them know, hey, I'm looking for more people like this, or I have this amazing way of working with me that's a new opportunity. If you know of anybody, I would appreciate you passing on the word, things like that. So you don't have to overthink it, but you do want to, again, think about who is already in your network who could potentially pass on your name. Of course, another way to find people for your offers is through paid ads, like, for example, on Facebook and Instagram. This, of course, has its own sort of pros and cons, but it can be a really great way to speed up the building of your audience and your list, because essentially you are paying for traffic as opposed to doing it in a more organic way, which can take longer. It's still very effective, but a lot of times I recommend that people, if they're going to be doing paid ads, also have some organic methods going on as well, such as posting in social media. So like anything, you don't want to worry so much about making things complicated. What it really comes down to is having a plan to find out where your people are and then nurturing them by putting regular content in front of them, making regular calls to action, again, like to paid offers, or having regular calls to action to get into conversation with you, like on DM, but really making calls to action regularly so that people get used to getting offers from you. You're sort of training them in that sense. So pick a couple of things to start with, and later you can always add more things or more marketing methods to the mix. And then lastly, you want to be intentional. You want to be intentional, of course, with your marketing always, but especially when it comes to building your audience and building that list of people who could potentially be buyers for your offers. You can keep track of your list growth. For example, you can use your email list service to check your audience size on a regular basis. keep track of that maybe weekly or monthly so that you can see your progress. And of course, also be looking at your social media stats as well. And I'll be the first person to say that it's not always about having, again, those big numbers, but being intentional that the people who are connecting with you and that you are seeking out are the kinds of people that are your soulmate clients you most want to work with.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or share it with someone else who would find it helpful. To stay connected with me, please visit shesgotclients.com and sign up for my email list at the bottom of the page. Or feel free to share this episode on your Instagram and tag me at Christine G, and I'll repost you. I would love to share this with as many people as possible. I love you. Until next time, keep shining your light.